The first time my mom introduced him, she said his name like it was supposed to mean something. "This is Greg," she said, smiling too wide. "He's going to be around more." Greg leaned forward before I could respond and stuck out his hand. His grip was tight, deliberate, like he needed to prove something. He smelled like cheap cologne layered over something sour. He smiled with his mouth, not his eyes. "So you're the kid," he said. Not her son, not nice to meet you, just the kid. I shook his hand and let go as fast as I could. I was 15 then, old enough to understand when adults lie, young enough that nobody really listened when I said something felt wrong. My mom thought she had moved on. What she didn't know was that my dad never left my life. Before Greg. My parents' divorce wasn't explosive. No screaming matches, no police calls, just a slow, quiet breakdown that felt worse somehow. My mom said my dad was emotionally unavailable. My dad said he was working too much and didn't realize how far apart they drifted. What mattered to me was this. My dad showed up. He came to every parent-teacher meeting, every soccer game, every school play, even the embarrassing ones. When I called him at midnight because I couldn't sleep, he answered. When the divorce finalized, my mom told me, things are going to change. She was right, but not in the way she thought. Greg moves in. Greg didn't officially move in right away. At first, it was just staying over. Then it was leaving clothes. Then it was rearranging things. The first thing he moved was the photos. I came home one day and noticed the family picture from the beach was gone. The one where my dad had sunscreen smeared on his nose and I was laughing so hard I almost fell over. I found it later in a box in the garage. "Your mom said it was time to declutter," Greg told me when I asked. "No need to hang on to the past." The way he said past felt like a threat. From that day on, he acted like my dad was a mistake my mom finally corrected. He'd say things like, "A real man doesn't let his family fall apart. You'll understand when you're older. I'm here now. That's what matters." My mom never corrected him. That hurt more than anything Greg said. What my mom didn't know. Every Wednesday night, my dad and I talked. Sometimes it was 5 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes we didn't say much at all. He never asked questions that felt like traps, never complained about my mom, never mentioned Greg unless I did. One night, after Greg yelled at me for leaving a glass in the sink, I told my dad everything. There was a long pause on the phone. Then my dad said calmly, "Do you feel safe?" That question stuck with me. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Okay," he replied, "then we pay attention." The uneasy feeling. Greg didn't hit me. He didn't threaten me outright. It was worse than that. He stood too close. He commented on my friends. He watched instead of listened. If I brought a friend over, Greg suddenly needed to be in the same room. If I laughed too loud, he'd tell me to watch my attitude. If I locked my door, he'd ask why. Once, when I was wearing headphones, he tapped my shoulder from behind and I jumped. He laughed. "Relax," he said. "You're too jumpy." I started writing things down after that. Dates, times, what was said. My dad never told me to do that. I did it because something inside me said I should. When I told my dad, he said, "That's smart." Just that. Greg's favorite lie. Greg loved to tell people that my dad had checked out. "He barely calls," Greg would say at dinner parties, right in front of me. "He doesn't really try." My mom nodded along like she needed to believe it. I stopped correcting them. That was my first real lesson in quiet revenge. Let people underestimate you. Let them think they've won. The turning point. The moment everything changed happened on a Thursday. I came home early because school was canceled. Greg's car was in the driveway. That alone was unusual. What was unusual was the silence. I walked in and heard Greg on the phone in the kitchen. "Yeah, she doesn't question me. Single moms are desperate. You just step in and take control." I froze. He laughed. "I'll be fine. The kid keeps quiet." I walked back out the door without making a sound. I sat on the curb and called my dad. I don't think he's just creepy. I think he's dangerous. My dad didn't hesitate. He said, "Pack a bag. I'm on my way." What Greg never understood. Greg thought silence meant weakness. He thought being loud meant being in control. He thought replacing my dad was as simple as occupying space. What he didn't understand was this. My dad didn't need to live in the house to protect me. He just needed to stay present. And he always had. End of part 1. My mom believed she had replaced my father. Greg believed he had taken over a family that wouldn't fight back. They were both wrong, because the quiet phase was over, and the consequences were just beginning. My dad arrived 20 minutes later. I remember the sound of his car door closing more than anything else. It was calm, solid, familiar, the opposite of the tight knot in my chest. He didn't rush me, didn't yell, didn't even ask what happened first. He just said, "Get in." Only when we were driving did he speak again. "You did the right thing," he said. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until my eyes started burning. A temporary escape. I stayed at my dad's place that weekend. My mom texted me a lot. At first, she sounded confused. "Why did you leave?" "Greg says you misunderstood something. You can't just run away." Then the messages shifted. "You embarrassed me. Greg is trying his best. You're being dramatic." My dad never answered for me. He let me decide what to say. I sent one message. "I don't feel safe." Nothing else. There was no reply. What my dad did next. My dad didn't confront Greg. He didn't threaten him. He didn't go to my mom and demand anything. Instead, he started preparing. He asked me to tell him everything, slowly, carefully. We went through my notes together. Dates, comments, situations. He didn't jump to conclusions. He asked questions like, "Who else was there? Did this happen more than once? Did you tell anyone?" Then he said something that surprised me. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "This is about control. People like Greg depend on confusion. We're going to remove that." Going back. On Sunday night, my mom came to pick me up. She hugged me like nothing had happened. Too tight, too fast. Greg stayed in the car. "She talked to him," she said on the drive back. "He feels really bad." I didn't respond. "He said he's just trying to be a father figure. You should try harder." I stared out the window and thought about what he'd said on the phone. Single moms are desperate. I wondered if my mom heard that voice when he spoke to her, or if she only heard what she needed to hear. The house felt smaller. When I got back, Greg acted different. Too polite, too careful. He started calling me buddy, asking about school, offering rides. That scared me more than when he yelled. Predators don't panic when they think they're winning. They adjust. I started spending more time in my room, more time texting my dad, more time pretending everything was normal. Greg hated that. "You're being distant," he said one night. "That's disrespectful." I nodded. Silence, I had learned, made people like him uncomfortable. The first slip. Greg started drinking more. At first, it was just a beer after work, then two, then a bottle on the counter like it belonged there. One night, he forgot I was in the hallway. "She's lucky I stepped in," he told my mom. "Her ex was useless, weak. The kid would have turned out the same." My mom didn't argue. I recorded that conversation on my phone. I didn't know if I'd ever need it, but my dad taught me something important. Truth is lighter when you carry it early. School notices. A week later, my English teacher pulled me aside. "You seem distracted," she said gently. "Everything okay at home?" I hesitated. My dad had told me not to lie, but not to overshare either. "I'm dealing with some stuff," I said. She nodded. "If you ever need support, the counselor's door is open." I thanked her. I told my dad that night. "That's good," he said. That means you're not alone. Greg loses control. Greg liked being seen as the authority, so when my mom started working late shifts and I stopped asking him for rides or permission, he got angry. One night, he slammed his hand on the table. "You don't get to ignore me in my own house," he said. My mom flinched. I didn't. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "It's not your house." The silence that followed was thick. My mom snapped, "Don't talk to him like that." Greg smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, I called my dad and told him exactly what happened. He didn't react emotionally. He said, "Good, he's showing his real self." The mistake Greg made. Greg assumed my dad had faded away. He assumed distance meant absence. He assumed silence meant surrender. So he started bragging. To neighbors, to coworkers, to my mom's friends. He told people my dad had given up custody, that he was basically raising me now. That lie came back to haunt him. Because one of those people was my school counselor's sister, and she recognized my last name. The phone call. The counselor called my mom first. Then she called my dad. Then she called me into her office. She didn't accuse. She didn't panic. She listened. And when I showed her my notes, when I showed her the recordings, her expression changed. "This needs to be addressed," she said carefully. I nodded. So did my dad. The calm before everything broke. That night at dinner, Greg joked louder than usual. My mom laughed harder than usual. Everyone was pretending. But the balance had shifted. Greg felt it. I could see it in the way his foot bounced under the table, in the way his eyes flicked to my phone. He didn't know what I had. He didn't know who I talked to. He just knew control was slipping. And people like Greg don't handle that well. The meeting happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Tuesdays used to be boring. Homework, dinner, sleep. Nothing important ever happened on a Tuesday. Until that one did. My mom got a call from the school while she was at work. I was already in the counselor's office when she arrived, her face tight with confusion and irritation. Greg wasn't there. That mattered more than I realized at the time. The first confrontation. The counselor didn't accuse anyone. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke carefully, like someone stepping across thin ice. "We've received concerns," she said, "and we need to talk about home dynamics." My mom crossed her arms. "Greg is strict," she said defensively, "but he's not dangerous." The counselor nodded. "I understand that's how you see it." Then she turned to me. "And how do you feel?" The room went quiet. I could feel my mom's eyes on me. Heavy, expectant. For a second, I almost backed down. Then I thought of my dad's voice on the phone. Calm, steady. Truth doesn't need to shout. "I don't feel safe," I said. It was the second time I'd said those words out loud. They felt heavier this time. Evidence changes everything. I didn't unload everything at once. I showed dates, patterns, small moments that added up. Then I played the recording. Greg's voice filled the room. "You don't get to ignore me in my own house." My mom flinched. The counselor paused the audio. "Is this accurate?" she asked. I nodded. My mom didn't speak. For the first time, I saw doubt crack through her certainty. Calling my dad in. The counselor asked a simple question next. "Is the other parent involved?" My mom hesitated. "He's around," she said. That's when the counselor said, "We'd like him here." My mom stiffened. She didn't argue. Greg panics. When Greg found out about the meeting, he didn't yell. He laughed. "They're overreacting," he said. "This is what happens when kids get ideas." But his hands shook when he poured his drink. That night, he asked to see my phone. I said no. The look on his face changed instantly. Not anger, fear. The day everything collapsed. My dad arrived at the school the next afternoon. He wore the same jacket he always did, the one he wore to my games, the one he wore when things mattered. Greg showed up late. That was his mistake. Because when he walked in, he didn't see a defeated ex-husband. He saw a father who never left. Greg smirked at first. Then the counselor laid everything out. The notes, the recordings, the behavioral patterns. Greg interrupted constantly. That's taken out of context. He's exaggerating. He's trying to manipulate you. My dad didn't respond. He waited. When control slips. Greg finally snapped. "You don't even live with him," he said, pointing at my dad. "You don't get to play hero now." That's when my dad spoke. "I never stopped being your father," he said calmly. The room went silent. Greg realized too late that he wasn't the loudest voice anymore. My mom breaks. After that, my mom cried. Not loudly, quietly. She asked me why I hadn't told her sooner. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I tried." She didn't argue. That was new. Immediate consequences. The counselor made recommendations: temporary separation, supervised contact only, further evaluation. Greg protested. He threatened lawyers. He accused everyone of bias. None of it worked. When we left, my dad walked beside me. Greg walked behind us. For the first time, he looked small. The house without him. Greg packed his things that night. He slammed doors, muttered insults, tried to guilt my mom. She didn't stop him. When his car pulled away, the house felt different. Not happier. Lighter. The aftermath begins. My mom didn't apologize right away. She avoided eye contact, kept busy, cleaned obsessively. But she stopped defending him. That was the first real change. Greg's last attempt. 2 weeks later, Greg sent my mom a long message, blaming me, blaming my dad, blaming everyone but himself. My mom showed it to me. She didn't ask what I thought. She just said, I blocked him. Quiet revenge isn't loud. Greg lost more than he realized. People stopped inviting him places. Work got uncomfortable. Stories didn't line up anymore. My dad didn't celebrate. He said, consequences don't need applause. End of part 3. My mom finally understood that she hadn't replaced my dad. She just stopped seeing him. Greg learned something else entirely. You can't erase someone who never leaves. And the quiet ones, they're usually the ones paying attention. After Greg left, the house didn't magically heal. That's something people don't talk about enough. When someone toxic is removed, what's left isn't peace, it's truth. And truth takes time to settle. My mom walked through the house like a stranger. She avoided certain rooms, certain memories, certain conversations. And for the first time since the divorce, she stopped pretending everything was fine. The apology that took time. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks before my mom finally knocked on my bedroom door instead of calling my name from the hallway. "Can we talk?" she asked. She sat on the edge of my bed like she used to when I was little. "I didn't listen," she said quietly. "I wanted things to work so badly that I ignored what was right in front of me. I waited. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was real." What changed? Greg didn't come back. Not to apologize, not to explain, not to fight. People like him don't fix things. They move on and look for easier targets. But the damage he left behind stayed. My mom started therapy. She didn't announce it. She just went. She stopped rushing relationships, stopped explaining away red flags, stopped choosing comfort over truth. That mattered. My dad never asked for credit. Through all of it, my dad stayed exactly the same. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't demand apologies. He didn't push himself into my mom's life. He just showed up. When I needed rides, when I needed advice, when I needed silence. One night, I asked him why he never fought harder during the divorce. He thought for a long time. "Because fighting loudly isn't the same as staying," he said. That sentence stayed with me. Greg's final consequences. Months later, I heard what happened to Greg. He lost his job after multiple complaints. He moved again. People stopped trusting him. Not because of me, because patterns always repeat when people refuse to change. That was the real revenge. No confrontation, no public humiliation, just reality catching up, understanding the difference. I used to think revenge meant getting even. Now I know better. Revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about refusing to let them win. Greg wanted control. He lost it. Greg wanted silence. He exposed himself. Greg wanted to replace my dad. He never stood a chance. What I learned that presence matters more than proximity. That loud people aren't always powerful. That staying doesn't always look dramatic. And I learned something else too. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who never leaves, even when they're pushed out. The last moment. On my birthday, my mom and dad were both there. Not together, not pretending, just present. My dad handed me a card. Inside, it said, "I'm proud of who you're becoming." Nothing else. That was enough. Final words. My mom thought she replaced my dad. She thought moving on meant erasing him. She was wrong, because real parents don't disappear when things get hard. They don't need titles or control. They just stay. And the people who stay quietly, they're the reason some stories end safely.